What is up, everybody? Sven Diesel here. We're going to be tying up a blob leech, pretty basic pattern using just a few materials. We're going to go ahead and get started here with this hook. It is a U660BL-BN in a size 10. It's a barbless hook, a jig hook with a 60-degree eye on it. We're going to be using some fire hole. These are their slotted tungsten beads. This is 3.5 millimeter, and this is called Birthday Suit. It's kind of a hybrid between black nickel and a silver. It's kind of got a unique finish to it that I kind of like. And so we're going to go ahead and get that on, inserting the smaller side, not the wider, bigger slot, and then we'll position it in our vise and make sure it's nice and secure. And we should be able to position that so the slot is going to be right there up on the eye. We're going to be using some Semperfli. This is a 6/0 in white. It's their wax thread. And I'm going to start that thread right there behind the bead, do about 5 to 7 wraps down the shank, go right back up, and then I'm going to make sure that that slotted bead is up where I want it. And then I'm going to do about 8 wraps or so, and then go down a little bit, and then build up another 4 or 5 wraps right there to hold that tungsten bead in place. And then I'll just work my way down the shank of the hook, be mindful of that hook point, and then we'll go ahead and trim out that tag end. And we are well into this fly. It's like I said, it uses basically 2 different materials. The first is this Nature's Spirit. This is their Fish Hunter Marabou and Sculpin Olive. One of my more favorite colors is this Sculpin Olive, and I'm going to take a feather here and I'm going to pull it and separate the tip out just to get that stem out, and it also helps with the tapering of the feathers. And then I'll grab it by the other end that would be attached to the skin, and then we'll just kind of get these long straggle ones out. On some of my other leech patterns I leave these, but I want the tail on these to be a little bit shorter. The focus on this is more of the blob, not so much a leech, but we're going to do this so that it's roughly 1 times, maybe 1.15 times the length of the overall hook, and then I'll go ahead and tie that in with a couple loose tight wraps, and then bring it up about with 1/3 of the way left, and I'll go ahead and trim this out, and then make sure that our marabou stayed on the top of the shank. And notice how I cut it at an angle. That kind of helps with the taper. For the body of this, I'm going to use a chenille, and I want to have back here towards the tail a little bit lighter, and so we're going to do spacing wraps, and then as we progress up, right there's a little slot in between the bead and the marabou. I'm going to do about 2 or 3 turns because I want to really stack this chenille. And this is Semperfli's. This is a golden olive. It's a 15 millimeter solid chenille. Really nice material. Comes in a bunch of different colors. So if you're fishing blob flies or imitating egg patterns, this is something that I've been using. And so I'm going to prep it by pulling out, so I've got just the core materials there to tie in. That way we have a nice even shank, and then I'll advance my thread up right behind the tungsten bead. I'll go ahead and just do a quick whip finish to secure my thread, and this little whip finish tool sometimes gets away from you, but we'll go ahead and get that thread out of our way, and I'm going to apply a little bit of super glue here. This is a Fly Tires Z-Ment, and I'm going to apply a generous amount right here to the body of this, the shank right now. That way I know this is not going to go anywhere. And I mentioned earlier that I'm going to go a little bit lighter here towards the back because I don't want to impede any sort of restriction on that hook point. And so I'm just doing about touching wraps. If not, they're a little bit spaced apart here, and the super glue will help keep those in place. But then I jump right here in between the gap, and I want to do 2 or 3 in here and kind of work my fibers back. And I'm going to basically I'm crowding this tungsten bead. We're going to allow the tungsten bead here to be kind of our aid, and I'm going to do a trapping wrap with this chenille with a wrap behind, and then I'll advance and do about 2 or 3 wraps right there where we laid down that in the beginning, that kind of that tapering cone. And so I want these thread wraps going down in, sucking that chenille backwards. And I'll go ahead and trim this out once I've done a couple of those securing wraps. And now this is where it can be a pain in the butt, or it can work out really well for you, depending on how meticulous you are. I'm just going to stroke these fibers back. And if you don't mind a few stragglers, this is easy. If you are OCD and you care about a little stragglers of chenille, where you could have issues. I like to offset most of my olive flies with an orange collar. That's just personal preference. You can use whatever you want, but I don't know if I'd leave it white. You could always just use black thread. And we're going to go ahead and do a 3-turn whip finish, and then I will also do a secondary 3-turn whip finish to kind of build up a collar. And you can see I've got some fibers there on the top that aren't wanting to cooperate, but the more you stroke back, just be mindful of that hook point so you don't stab yourself. And that is pretty much the fly. I'm going to put a little bit of UV resin here on the whip finishes we did, just to make it nice and durable. I also like these going back, kind of looking more like an egg. I've had really good luck with this material as egg in a few different colors, and so we'll go ahead and cure that up there and make sure that it's nice and durable. And that's pretty much the fly. The color combinations are Endless Marabou. Comes in a ton of different colors. You've got tungsten beads now available in so many different colors. This 15mm chenille from Semperfli is available in a bunch of colors, so tie some up, fish them, and I hope they pierce some lips for you.